bit dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome, guys. Miss Liz in the house. That's right. And we are at the final 2 shows of season 6. Who knew that we could do all of this in just a couple of months? We have served 83 teas this year since August 1st. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in for those 83 tea times. But we have a lineup of next year's season 7 already in the works. We have a complete show of 192 guests that are coming next year. So check that out. We will be back in February for that. But today I have the incredible Debbie Show in the house. And we have a lot of similarities. Her story is going to open some doors. And today her tea that we're serving is Hurt, History, and Healing. And I love the way that we're going to close up this year's season because we're going to bring some really heavy and hard topics to think about as we bring in the new year, because we want to bring in the new year with some lightness. And her incredible story of Paper Roses is going to blow your mind away. We have some little surprises along the show today. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Everybody get over to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, all those platforms, and give those a like, follow, and subscribe, and give these tea times out there, because I do guarantee these tea times do make a difference with someone. Now let's get started with a disclaimer and an intro, and let's get Debbie in here, and we're going to serve her tea. And her tea again today is Hurt, History, and Healing. We're doing the 3 H's this year. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicated to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own judgment when considering any action or decisions that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. Miss Liz welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time, the final 2 shows, where stories are honored, healing is intentional, and words are allowed to land softly where they are needed most. Today, we welcome a woman whose work reminds us that beauty can still bloom after heartbreak. Joining us is Debbie Show, author and creator of Paper Roses, a tender, reflective work that explores love, loss, and the quiet strength it takes to keep going. Debbie's storytelling is gentle but powerful, offering readers permission to grieve, to remember, and to heal at their own pace. Her work speaks to the places where emotions are folded carefully like paper roses, fragile, meaningful, and created with intention. This tea time is about honoring what we carry, what we release, and what we choose to transform into something beautiful. So grab your cup and take a breath. This conversation is an invitation to feel, reflect, and remember that softness can still hold strength. Let me welcome Debbie Chauvin and let's spill her tea today. Welcome,
Hi.
Debbie.
Thank you so much for having me. That was beautiful what you just read. I was almost crying. We're just starting. I'm getting emotional.
Well, the tears are allowed to roll on Tea Time with Miss Liz. Miss Liz loves when people. I don't love when you cry, but I love when the emotion comes out because I do work deep on all of you guys. Debbie, I want to get into your story. Who were you as a little girl, and who are you now as a grown woman? And then we'll get into your book.
Yeah. So, as a little girl, I always wanted to know. I mean, I drove my mom crazy because I was always why? You know when the kids say why, and my mom just didn't want to hear it anymore. Very curious, always a reader, very creative, but also very lost because my parents were unable to, because of their own trauma, give me love in the way that a child needed it. And worse than that, I think exposed me to a lot of trauma. That was not their intention, but it definitely, I shut down at some point in my childhood. And all I had was my art. I had nothing else.
And who are you today, Debbie?
Well, you know what? The thing about getting older, you're not as good looking as you were, but you sure are a lot wiser because as the decade, I've learned something with every decade. And I think now, when you hear about wise old people, I feel like I've acquired wisdom. I've become a much more empathic person, learned not to blame myself, pretty much to love myself and to love others. Um, this journey has taught me empathy in a really deep way, not just a cursory, superficial way. So I'm not perfect, far from it. I get hurt. Things get messy. This whole thing with my sister Tracy, it's a little messy, honestly. But I deal with things as they come along. There's something you said in one of your interviews. You said show up. And I am a big believer in showing up. And I think just one day turns into another day. And if you just keep showing up, good things happen.
Absolutely. Even on the hard days, those are the days we really need to show up.
Oh, yeah. Show up for yourself, show up for other people. And there are days when I allow myself not to. But then you can bet one day or 2 days, and then you're just back up and you've got to show up again. Don't really have a choice, honestly.
Absolutely. Well, Debbie, I'm going to pull your book up. So for the audio listeners, if you could just describe what the cover looks like and tell us a little bit on how you got the title and a little background of the story. We don't want to give too much away because we want people to go out and get the book. But I'm going to pull the book up and we can share a little bit about it. I love the title because that's one of my favorite country songs as well as Paper Roses. So if you just want to share a little bit on the book and how you got the cover and the name and all that good stuff.
So the cover, I had a cover designer is a man named Diego Sandrino, and he's from Spain, kind of very Moorish, very close to Morocco. I thought he would do a good job because my mother's family is from Morocco. They were Sephardic Jews from Morocco. And so there's a little Morocco there, and then you see the telephone wire. There's a little bit of California, Silicon Valley, try to blend the two. And then the roses, of course, because the title of the book is Paper Roses.
So how did you get the title, Debbie?
The title. So you can't tell now because I'm old, but I used to be a singer. I was one of these artsy girls, singing, writing, all that stuff, not athletic stuff. And my dad, who was really a very broken person, but a very kind person as well, used to drag me out in front of his friends. You gotta sing Paper Roses. My daughter sings Radio Ready, right? And so he would drag me out at a barbecue or party, and I would sing like the one song, Paper Roses by Marie Osmond. I know there's more than one version of that song, but I always did like that song. And also, it's artsy too, because I actually have the main character making these little roses for a family celebration out of paper.
So is Marie Osmond one of your favorite singers?
Okay, I know it sounds really weird because I don't know her at all, but she's been through some shit.
Yes, she has.
You know, 3 marriages and child stardom. And I for some reason, I just kind of relate to her, even though, she's super rich and doesn't relate to me. And the lyrics from the song about being, artificial love and fake love, this whole idea that people and even families can present themselves one way, and then honestly, it's like objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. They're not anything like that. It's like being in a fun house. So that idea of being fake as opposed to being real. But yeah, I do like her. I don't know.
I don't know her, but I like her.
Yeah.
I always like Marie Osmond. I like the Osmond story because a lot of people looked at them because of the celebrity name, right? And the music industry, but they never looked at them as a family, the generational cycle that they went through as well, because they have a story as well. Um, Tell us a little bit about your story in Paper Roses, Debbie.
Yeah, so there's a lot of my story there. It falls into a genre called autobiographical fiction, and I had a developmental editor help me because the thing about memoir for me is it would have been the way memory is. I would have remembered only the bad things and not any of the good things. It's kind of like the way we humans cope. And I didn't want to write a burn it all down memoir where I was attacking my parents or, even attacking my sister. So I went the direction of there's a lot of truth, like the frame is true, but I was able to build up these conversations that I wasn't there for, like my mother growing up, my father growing up. So maybe there's an understanding rather than tearing them down, just kind of understanding how they got to be where they were. So the true part is that my parents were very young, and my mother came from a family that was narcissistic in general, and so she didn't get what she needed, and she wasn't able to give it, and my father wasn't either, and so they were very blue collar, never had enough money, and then my dad got into drugs, and then he got into selling drugs. And then my mom got into really wanting money. And so it became like this looking the other way. So there were always all these people coming in and out of the house. A lot of them very unsafe people, people that would molest children, people that liked children. It was an extremely unsteady, unsafe environment. And I don't want to go too much into that because there's a lot of people that have those kind of environments. And I'm nothing special when it comes, my family's nothing special, but it felt like Breaking Bad, Ozarks, and Goodfellas are all in the same family because there was like this veneer of suburbia, right? That everybody on the outside looking in felt like, oh, what a great family, but then inside, I came out one way, and then my sister ended up really becoming an infamous con artist, and that's kind of what inspired me. I wanted to know why all that happened, how she got to be the way she was, why we were so different. And so that's the crux of it.
Well, Debbie, when people are raised in homes with dysfunction, right? One can choose that path, the other one can choose another path, and then people that are breaking the generational cycle, they're like, why did this person choose to break that cycle? Why did they not like the cycle continue on? And that's what I got from a lot of your story was the generational trauma and cycle that went on from your story.
Yeah, I mean, it's the story of the scapegoat, right? That the truth teller is the outsider, and so once you're the outsider, there's a gift to that. People think, oh my gosh, I'm the outsider, I'm not included, I'm not loved. But there's a gift because you can step outside and see things. Well, kind of see things the way they are. You never really see things the way they are until you're older. But for me, that was the gift. It kind of forced me. If I had been like the golden child and I had been included, I might never have got on this journey. I would have just believed drank the Kool-Aid, that was being served. But that's why I want people to feel that, hey, maybe you're the outsider, maybe you were the one that were blamed for everything, or I always joke that I could have been in Peoria, but somehow pretzel logic would have connected whatever happened in California to me, right? The carrier of the shame. But I honestly feel like it was a gift.
Well, Debbie, we had some questions that came in about your book and about you, and I'd like to get those out to you today. The first one that came in was, what inspired you to blend psychological insight with generational history in your novel?
Well, I wanted to know. When I got the call from the New York Times, middle of COVID, I was getting all my gear on to do some testing because I work with kids. And I get this call, and it's like the shame. I feel like I should be the one wearing the orange jumpsuit, even though I didn't do anything wrong. It was like there's still part of me that felt like I'm the carrier of the shame for the family. And so I really wanted to know how this happened. And for that, I needed to go back a couple generations. And for that, I needed to write. And I know you talk about that a lot in your podcast. Is about the healing power of writing. So that's what inspired me.
Debbie, you went back 2 generations, correct?
I went back to 1941, my mom's birth. So I went back to my grandmother, and then my mother, and then me and my sister. So yeah, 2 generations.
And what did you learn about the women from those generations?
Well, I learned that the narcissism came from survival, having to survive, in a culture where there was a lot of poverty, where you see this brass ring and you just want to grab it, you just want to survive. You do whatever you need to do, and whether that's lying or cheating or lying to yourself, that's what you got to do. And I think that it also came from women not having any choices, because my grandmother was forced to marry her cousin. And I'm even telling you, cousin marriage was big in my family. I'm surprised my mom wasn't born like King Tut. Not having any choices, having to have 8 children when she could have maybe just had 2. And just women were just, property.
So Debbie, I'm going to ask you a personal question. You don't have to answer it if you're not comfortable. Was there a lot of incest in your family?
In my mother's family, there was a therapist told me that my mother's behavior of the borderline personality and the way she behaved, that there had to have been, and I've heard stories of that. I think that men just kind of viewed women as something they're objects. They could cheat on them, they could, have uncles and cousins. I've heard stories. And of course nobody believes the woman, or just brush it under the rug. Right? So there was that too. My mom had an eating, not to give away the book, but she was when she was 13 years old, I'm talking about Morocco, she had anorexia and she was hospitalized, and they had never heard of it. No one had, back in 1954, no one had ever heard of anybody having anorexia. So what they did is they starved her because they said she had a fever. So she goes in the hospital and they starve her. And so there's no young woman in that culture that has that degree of dysfunction where there's not just a lot going on.
For all of my psychiatrists that are listening to Tea Time and that will watch the replay, I want to ask a question. I'd love to get the feedback from you guys. If eating disorders are related to incest abuse, because I have suffered from an eating disorder as well, and I I had severe incest from an uncle. So I'm curious if that your mom's eating disorder had anything to do with the incest. So, Debbie, you got into becoming a therapist. What got you into that field? Was it the generational cycle and trauma and all that you grew up in?
Yeah, I actually needed a therapist. I'm not very good at a lot of things. I have ADD. So I started, and also my personality, I'm too mild and sweet. And so I started working, didn't have a college degree, and I hit the glass ceiling really fast. And so I thought, oh, and I needed therapy badly. I mean, really badly. So I had good insurance and I started seeing a therapist, and she suggested that I become one. Because I couldn't decide on what I wanted to do. I had 2 years of college and that was it. So I just went back to school, and yeah, it was I wanted to know why people did what they did. Kind of got the answer to that one, very simple answer. And then I wanted to help people. I wanted to help children especially. So they felt heard.
So, Debbie, how did your work as a therapist shape the emotional depth of your characters in the book?
Well, I think mostly what it did is over the years, because a lot of times working at a high school, I would try to get a kid into a special placement, right? That really needed it. Maybe some kind of special therapy where they needed a lot of support, more than a school could give. And there was limited money. And so I had to learn how to write, with permission of the parents, I had to learn how to write a story of a family in a compassionate way, in a caring way, a story of trauma. And I had to go back pretty far because sometimes these kids looked like they had behavior disorders and that was it, forget you. And I had to go back really far and I had to learn how to tell stories. And I'm telling you, I did that for 20 years. I got really good at it to where I could get a kid placed. And so I think that is what really helped my writing, because I really started to understand families and the empathy piece. A lot of these people were really struggling, especially when I came across a family where it was a single mom who had struggled with addiction and then came out the other side and was doing really well. But then she had a kid who then she was struggling with addiction, and it was just so heartbreaking. And that I heard that story a lot. There are just lots of stories I heard, and honestly, I love hearing the story. I'm just like you. I love hearing the stories. I have to be really careful not to be nosy about it because I only wanted the information that would help the family and not the other stuff.
Well, for me, it's the adversity, right? What you take from the pain and turn it into purpose. And that's what you've done with this book, with Paper Roses, is you've taken your pain and you've written a book to give people that chance to read and to heal through the reading and writing.
Yeah, I wanted to provide a template, but I didn't want to come across, the one thing about me is I never want to come across too clinical. That's not who I am. I come from a blue collar background, where authenticity is just really valued and prized. And it's always been something that I've never liked when people just come across and just kind of lecture at you. So I pretty much more showed what was going on rather than told what was going on. And even the therapists in my book were a little bit crazy. I don't know why I did that.
You know what? Crazy is good, Debbie.
Yeah.
Because that shows that we're normal.
Yeah.
It's the normal that scares me. I'm for the crazy. I like the crazy.
Yeah, a little messy, Sometimes
it's flawless, right?
And then we got to figure it out and try to figure out, okay, that was messy, and be self-aware about it and not do it again. But I'm never going to be up here claiming perfection. I'm never going to be one of those YouTube psychologists. I'm not saying it's bad because I actually watch a lot of YouTube psychologists, but I'm never going to be one of the people that comes in and says, this is how to do it. Let people figure that out on their own. I'll be a witness for them though.
I want to get into your T because your T is hurt, history, and healing. You give me 3 H's. Why'd you give me those 3 words, Debbie?
Well, the pain, without going into the H part, I forget the name of the book, and I wish I'd looked it up, but there was a book I read a long time ago, and at the very end, the author said, the cause of all the problem in the world is unprocessed pain. And it's not the pain, it's the fact that we haven't processed it. And that just stuck with me. And oh my God. Oh, Reviving Ophelia. That was the name of the book, Reviving Ophelia. And it was about young mothers and daughters and, becoming a woman. And I just thought, wow, it's so important to be able to, like you said, show up. And even if it's painful, peel back those layers and be brave enough to do that. It's hard.
Yeah. I like that you gave me 3 H's because it shows strength. Because when we use heavy words, people think, oh, she's not healing. She's stuck in the past. She's stuck in the history. We're not stuck there. We're overcoming it. And do you suffer with PTSD, Debbie?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I wish they would put complex PTSD in the DSM, and they haven't put that in there yet. The first time I ever, because I used to go around to all these different schools back in the day, and the first time I ever hit a middle school, and I dropped a piece of paper, I was an adult, and I actually bent down to pick up the paper, and I was in middle school again. So I do have moments, right, where it's like, whoa, especially after my sister's arrest, that really jarred me. I thought I had it down. And then when she was arrested for stealing, over $1 million from Jemana Kidd, the ex-wife of Jason Kidd, it just threw me for a loop. It was like, who am I? Who is my family? Who is my family? And it did take me back.
So, Debbie, in the book, do you share about Tracy?
Well, I have a character named Nikki who had a lot of the same experiences as my sister Tracy. The way I wrote it is the reason I wrote it as fiction is I wanted to put a frame around the truth and then rewrite the truth in a way that put a manhole cover on things, where I wasn't just constantly feeling the emotion, where there was some healing, where maybe there were some conversations we never had, or she got, in the book, the character based on my sister goes to juvenile hall. That never happens, there's never a consequence. In the book, when the father character dies, there's someone there to witness his dying. In real life, the father character died by himself. So there were things that I got to do. I got to move chess pieces around. But there's a lot of truth. Yeah, the Nikki character is based on my sister Tracy.
We have a question that just came in, and it says, can fiction be a safer way to explore real trauma?
Yeah, I think it can, because I think, like, I would write, I didn't have to be, dedicated to every word that was said and everything that was done. And then I would have like this epiphany, because it's so creative, right? It's much more creative than writing a memoir, well, in my opinion. And so I would I had no idea, because you never know what's going to come out in the fiction. You never know what, symbol or, the hummingbird or something that just comes out of your brain, and you're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then you just feel like you walk around for a couple of days and you're like, oh, and you start putting things together. So that whole creative process I found to be very healing. Nothing against memoirs. I love memoir too. But for me, it was very, very healing to see these things come up.
And what is something you learned while writing this book that surprised you, Debbie?
Okay, this is tooting my own horn, but I had no idea I was this creative. I mean, when
Poof, it just came out.
I just came out, I think it more honestly, the writing of the book is I felt like I had an understanding by the end, and a lot more of forgiveness, like understanding of why my mother did what she did, because some of the things that she did in real life that are not in the book are just, and a lot of people would say unforgivable. And I just kind of really felt like I understood my mom and my grandmother and my father a lot more. And in terms of understanding why people do what they do, they just do. That's the answer to the question. There's no great philosophy or anything you learn in school. People just do what they do.
So, Debbie, are you still that why woman today?
Am I what?
Are you still the why woman? You were the why kid. Are you still the
Oh
why
yeah,
woman?
the why. No, I'm not the why woman anymore. But let me tell you, I started out writing the book. Why? And I think by the end, I don't really need to answer that question anymore.
You got the answer to the why.
I did.
Debbie, what truth took you the longest to accept?
The truth that took me the longest to accept was, oh gosh, this is so hard because it sounds like an attack on my mom and my dad. That beneath the glittery exterior, beneath all of the whatever things look like on the outside, there really wasn't any real love. And my parents did some things that were pretty awful, and cruel. And to accept that, because as a kid, you want to believe your parents are like, amazing, that it's your fault. And again, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying their behavior. And as a family, we always were so like, we're better than everybody else. And just facing that we were no better than everyone else. That was just the narcissism. That's a tough one.
Well, the people that are supposed to protect us are the ones hurting us, so it's hard for us to process.
Oh yeah. It takes, if it takes you 60 years to process it, fully process, right? I mean, there are moments when you have anger and you understand, but to fully process it in a way where it's like, yeah, there's nothing special about our family. It was just a mask.
Only mask good. Generational trauma and cycles. What does it mean to you, Debbie, to break the cycle?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason I wrote this book, honestly, because I knew that, my sister being all over American Greed and all of these TV shows, and I knew that my grandchildren might not be alive for her. And honestly, my sister's family, they were going to want to know. And I wanted a legacy, a roadmap. That if, because there's one scapegoat in every family, and this keeps going on, and I thought, well, I wanted a roadmap for someone to be able to look at this and go, this is what happened. Even though it's fiction, this is what happened. This is what, and have a way for them to kind of understand. But I do feel like the one who breaks the cycle pays a big price. I think they're paying the price for the next generation, because I have paid a price for this. Putting myself out there, also having the family, not understand you. But my son seems to be moving through life much easier than I ever did, all the way through, from beginning to end, just moving through life in a way where I know we stop the cycle.
Breaking the cycle is not an easy thing to do it. And I've said this a couple of times on Tea Time. It takes 7 generations to break the cycle completely. So that would mean 7 generations, 6 after you would have to continue breaking the cycle. So do we actually break the cycle of trauma? I don't think we ever will.
Yeah, because I see the anxiety in my son. I see that, He's a new father. He gets really stressed out. Sometimes men don't know how to deal with anxiety and stress. It comes out in not a healthy way. But he's actually a stand-up guy who shows up, so that maybe that's good enough. And at least it's going to be better for them than it was for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Debbie, what cycle did you break that changed everything?
I think the narcissism, and I hate to use that word because, oh my gosh, it's everywhere. And people use it every time they don't like someone, they say narcissistic. But I think that in families, families have this narcissistic family system. And I think that's what I broke. And then also love. I was able to give my son what I never got.
And Debbie, what healing feels? What does healing feel like at this stage of your life?
Well, it's an ongoing process because I'm going to be retiring. Well, pretty much retired. I might work a little bit in June. So I got to reinvent myself. So I think for me, what I need to do is I need to learn how to be at peace with myself and accept quiet. Accept that I don't have to have something going all the time. Whether it's noise in the background or a project, that I can just sit with myself and enjoy the moment. That's what I'd really like to do. And that's my third act. I don't ever want to be done. I want to be 89 years old and still working on healing.
Debbie, what is one story every woman needs to tell?
One story every woman needs to tell. Okay, so I don't know if this is answering the question directly, but you know how when we're teenagers and women are competing with each other for the guy or whatever? I think that women need to support each other all the way through life and mentor each other and lift each other up. And one of the things I was thinking about this before is my sister, that was one of the ways she conned other women, is she said, I'm here to lift you up, I'm here to be your support. Women, advocating for each other against abuse. But I honestly think her message is really good, is that we need to help each other. I want to help you.
Right? We can't do it alone. We have to support one another and generally support each other through our stories and through our work and services.
Yeah. Especially younger, I've had interns and most of them have been really great. And I always feel like I need, that's my job, is to kind of give them some wisdom that can help them. That's what the story is.
Debbie, how do you balance truth, inspiration, and emotional safety while drawing from real experiences?
Okay, so the emotional safety part is there were some things that I didn't tell in a book.
Gotta keep some stuff.
Regurgitate everything. I think I made the Abby character, who's based on me, a lot smarter than me, a lot wiser than me. She's more of a Nancy Drew kind of person. She didn't keep stubbing her toe 50 million times. So I didn't put every time I made a bad choice in a man in that book. I mean, seriously, you only need one. You don't need to have all the 5 bad choices you made, and then that repetition compulsion that people do where they just have to keep trying to get it right with the wrong person. I did all that, I've tried to find love in all the wrong places. I'm lucky I'm not wearing an orange jumpsuit for how gullible and stupid I was when I was young, but I didn't put any of that in the book. Because that would have been a memoir. And I think I wanted to more inspire people than make people feel sorry for me. So that's how I kept things safe.
And Debbie, do you plan on writing a second book?
Yeah, I've been thinking, it's been going through my head. I took the longest time to try to figure out what I was going to write. I was going to go in a total different direction. But I want to keep going with the same kind of themes. Blue collar. I don't want to be, I want to be respectful of it though. Blue collar, a little bit of poverty, but a lot of strength. Even though I'm highly educated, I was kind of forced to be because I wasn't really good at anything else. I still feel a kindred spirit with people who are really kind of struggling in life that, by the grace of God, I'm not. So I want to write about those people.
I think blue collar stories need to be told. Those are where the adversity comes from, because we fall a lot. We come from a lot of falls, and we get back up, and we continue on.
Yeah, and I respect that grit. And I'll tell you, I've got an old neighbor when I was a kid. She's 4 years younger than mine. She read my book, and she's like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." But I remember being 10 and seeing her at 6, and I could tell a kindred spirit. I could tell that girl, I don't know what it was, we recognized each other. And I'm going to help her. She wants to write about her Harleys and her life. She's living in North Carolina now. And I'm going to help her write a book. Because the publishing industry really wants to hear from young women with Ivy League kind of educations who have connections. It sounds really rude, but, it's who you know. And I really think that blue collar voice needs to be heard.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the publishing company you worked with, Ingram Spark Publishing. Why did you choose to work with them for your book?
Oh, okay. No. I actually made an LLC called Fieldmere Press, so I actually self-published. And Ingram Spark is just the company that if you want to sell to like Barnes & Noble or anybody outside of Amazon.
Okay.
Ingram Spark, yeah. I did it all myself. Oh my God, what a process. I learned about myself through trying to publish my own book about all the sharks out there.
And there's a lot of sharks biting in the water.
There are, and I'm very vulnerable because I'm a kind person who wants to see the best in people. I'm never going to change. So I'm very vulnerable to that.
I think they seek our blood, like they're like vampires. They know how to come at us because of our kindred spirit.
Yeah, I think they see kindness and they mistake it as weakness.
Yeah.
And it's really not, because I wouldn't have it any other way.
So sharing your story with Paper Roses, I'm going to bring up a little thriller clip. I'm going to just pull us over to the side so everybody can see a little bit about what the book is about. And at the end of the video, it'll tell you where you can get all the book and all that. And then we'll come back and we'll have some more conversation. But Debbie, don't leave. I'm just going to slide you to the side. We're just going to put the thriller on so people can watch that.
Which one did you choose?
I think I chose the first one.
Okay.
So let's go with the first thriller, and we're going to play that now for all the listeners out there. For the audio listeners, if you'd like to see the video, you'll have to jump onto Miss Liz's YouTube channel and podcast apps that do video. So I'm going to pull that up right now, and then I'm going to come right back with Debbie, and we're going to share a little bit more with Debbie.
I wanted to make it my fault, but I knew the truth. Mimuna. They call it the night of sweetness, but our house only knows the bitter. Every family has its secret language. Ours is crisis. I thought that day ended, but stories like ours never really dry. Paper Roses by Debbie Shaw. based on the novel that explores what we inherit and what we survive. It is inspired by true events, the fictionalized story of how con artist Tracy Hudson came to be 2 generations back. Now available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Debbie.com.
I think we had some little glitches and all that, so I will put that little clip up on my Facebook page. Some of the sound kind of kicked in and out. We have these glitchy things that go when we have a live show. So, Debbie, I want to ask you, what legacy do you hope your work will leave behind?
What legacy? I'm sorry, the last part of the question. What legacy?
And do you hope your work will leave behind?
Yeah. So well, of course, for my family. I'm gonna put. I decided to put a letter in the book about what was true and what wasn't true. But also, I want people to read it and go, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Like, it wasn't me. This happens in families where there's a lot of dysfunction. And people think they're experiencing it by themselves, but there's millions of people that are experiencing the same kind of pain and longing and desire to be loved. I don't think that people should ever be out there in the world with such needs, because it's a recipe for disaster. When you need love that badly and don't get it, awful things happen sometimes. And so I want people to know it's not them and that they are worthy and they're enough.
So, Debbie, how do generational stories impact identity development?
Yeah, so I think very early on, I, along with every kid in this kind of narcissistic family, we're not allowed to be kids. It's kind of like we're treated as if we're adults, like we don't have any needs, and we're not allowed to behave as children. And if we don't toe the line, then we're no good. And so you kind of grow up believing that it's your fault. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my mom never bought us clothes. So I remember my socks falling down around my ankles all the time because the elastics were busted. And I remember thinking there was something wrong with my legs, that my legs were the reason that my socks wouldn't stay up, that I was always bending down to pick them up. And so how do you feel about it? When you're thinking that about yourself, that there's something wrong with your legs or something wrong with your feet, the way they mess up shoes. It's rough. And I'm not the only one. I don't want to play pity party. But I want people to know there's nothing wrong with you.
Absolutely. And that's why I said our stories resonate a lot. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has a story, but the similarities join people together and connect people together. And I truly believe that my guests find me for a reason, because the universe wants us to grow and heal together and support each other. Like you just said, like for women, like what story should all women do? Support each other. Debbie, how did your family history influence your creative process, like to get through the hard times?
I think that we have a lot of creative women in my family, and that's what we lean on. I don't know about family history. That's a good question. I think that I was always kind of a dreamer. I used to get in trouble for being a dreamer, like, oh, I've got an answer. Okay. What happened is I went into a fantasy world where it was all about Alice in Wonderland, like just reading and reading and reading and creative. And I think it was my escape. I think that answers the question better. It was the way I survived. If I didn't have going into that fantasy world like Walter Mitty, maybe it seemed kind of weird as a kid, but if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't have made it. That fantasy and the creative part was a way of surviving.
I completely get that because I was the girl who thought Alice in Wonderland was about me. And my grandma said, because I kept saying, why are they calling me Alice? My name is Elizabeth. Why are they calling me Alice? And she's like, it's not about you. And I was like, no, it is. Like, I go in the rabbit hole, Grandma. Like, I go to that land. Like, there is the Queen of Hearts and this mean person in my life. And there is the chaos and the cat and the crazy cat that I talk to and the imaginary tea party. And that's why tea has really stuck with me. So when you mentioned the Alice in Wonderland, like, I don't know how many people Alice in Wonderland actually saved a lot of people who went through a lot of trauma as a child.
Yeah, a lot of those stories, like for me also was the Wizard of Oz, right? You got the flying monkeys. Scary. Yep. Oh my gosh. Those are the enablers, and then you've got the wizard behind the curtain. So those are amazing stories, and I read constantly as a kid and immersed myself in that. So yeah, and I don't know, like I think I always would have been that way, but I remember talking about a family member. I remember that I used to watch this show called The Flying Nun on TV. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there was this nun that, she touched her habit and then she could fly. So I remember being on a bar stool pretending that I was flying. And actually, I honestly believed that I was flying. I told my mom I'm flying, and then she was like really young and she's like, you are not flying. She was probably afraid that I was going psychotic or something because I was insisting, no, I'm flying. I am flying. I know I'm on this bar stool, but I'm actually flying, and I'm sitting there with my little habit. So I was a very imaginative kind of kid. And again, it saved me.
Debbie, were you drawn to the Sound of Music?
Oh my gosh, yes. How did you know?
Resonation, man. I'm telling you, because of our stories being so similar, those were things that helped me get through the harder times. Was the musicals, was the fantasy lands like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music, the Flying Nun. That was Julie Andrews that was in the Flying Nun, I believe, as well. She was the main character. Those were the things that got me through my healing journey. So when I was listening to you mention Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, I was like, Sound of Music's got to be in there too.
Yeah, did I put that down as my favorite movie? So now I shouldn't say, because now my people can guess my password on all of my things. But one of my security questions is, what's your favorite movie?
No, that was not one of the questions I asked you, but I just felt because you were mentioning Alice in Wonderland and you were mentioning, the similarities.
I love that. So my mother had a friend who was also from Morocco, but she was a wonderful woman, still alive. She's in her 90s, so I shouldn't say was. And she had divorced her first husband because he was a pedophile. And you didn't do that back then. It was in the early 60s, and she had 3 kids, and she was getting remarried, and her husband, or her and her fiance, took me to my first movie ever, because we always went to the drive-ins, and this was the first movie at a movie theater, and I remember seeing all the velvet and the ropes and everything, and it was The Sound of Music. And I have played that record over and over and over again and sang, because like I said, I used to be able to sing, memorized all the songs. So yeah, so you go into Fantasyland, and again, sometimes people think you're weird because sometimes you're just like, I probably did it a little too much where I would kind of disassociate, right? And I'd be in class and just kind of like thinking about my fantasy world instead of like what I was supposed to be thinking about.
Yeah, I totally get that. And that's survival, right? You had to survive the hard stuff.
For sure. But I didn't put it in a book. That would be a memoir. I made my character of Abby really, really resilient, like Nancy Drew. she doesn't have to do that. She was a little wiser and smarter than me.
Well, in the book of Paper Roses, I believe there's something about an inheritance, identity, and breaking cycles. Is that the three main directions of that book?
Oh, for sure. For sure. That's what it's about, you know. And everybody who reads it gets something different from it. It's also about, like, I think it's about understanding too. Because I didn't turn anybody into a she-devil. You know, I wanted people to be shown as complex individuals. I wanted people to understand how they got to be the way they were. Not why, but how.
And so, Debbie, what makes Paper Roses emotionally layered?
Well, so I talk about Abby a lot, and that's a character based on me, but I actually have the main character, basically the anchor of the book, is a maid. And in real life, her name was, I think you say in English, Fatima. In French, you say Fatima. But my mother had a maid in Morocco, and I remember her. She was a lovely woman. And so I had her be the narrator for about half the book. And she is like wise. She's the anchor. She's the one who sees things. She's the one who helps my mother character as she's growing up. My mother never had a helper, but you know, the trope of a maid, I put that in there. And everybody who reads the book, that's her favorite character. Her name is Yasmina in the book, and that's her favorite character because that is the wise woman. That's the woman who was thrown away as a teenager and then just rose and was able to give back and love. And a lot of people say they kind of annotated, like a lot of things that she said, they underlined, they're going to go back to. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I tried.
So, Debbie, was the maid your savior? Like, was she the lady that believed in you and got you through the hard times?
No, but kind of. So when I was 4 years old, my mom, I had a middle sister who's not in the book. I didn't put her in the book, but we went to Morocco to visit. I think my mom was considering divorcing my dad, and it was horrible. It took a month to get, I would say 2 weeks to get to Morocco because we went by train across the United States, and then we got on a plane, and we got to Portugal, then we got to Morocco, and I was miserable, and I was missing my dad, who was a very loving man. And I get to Morocco, and the whole family is like, I'm 4 years old, and they're all on my case. You better behave, because I was whining, and I was unhappy, and I was crying. And the only one who was really caring, I snuck out of the house one day, being really brave, and the maid found me. And she took me to, Fatima, she took me to the maid's quarters, and there she and her husband handed me a rose, so another idea of Paper Roses. And she gave me a Coca-Cola, and she sat with me, didn't speak my language, but what an act of kindness, because it was kind of like everybody was dogpiling on me, like, you better learn how to behave, kid. And then I had this maid who was lovely, and I often asked about the maid. And she was a Muslim woman. She was dressed from head to toe in black. And every time it was like, what about her? So in a way, this book honors the maid.
So, Debbie, if anybody would like to get this book, where could they get this book? And if you could just spell out your website.
Yeah, so I'm working on my website right now. It's going to be better, but right now you can find me on debbieshow.com, DEBBYSHOW.com, and you can get the book on Amazon. You can get it on BarnesandNoble.com, and then also I have an audiobook out. It's on Spotify, so if you want to use your if you have Spotify Premium, you can use your 15 hours monthly to listen to the book or buy it. Waiting for it to go on Amazon. It's going to be maybe a couple more weeks. For Audible. And then Barnes & Noble has the audiobook as well. That's the thing I want to do a shout out to Lorianne Hart, because she was one of my sister's victims who was an actress. And she voiced the audiobook, and she did a beautiful job. I never would have been able to find anybody that good.
And Debbie, what's your final message to all the listeners?
I guess, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for hearing my story. And, oh gosh, this is so corny. I love you. That's my final message, is I love you.
You know what? I think the whole world needs to hear I love you more. So thank you for that. And we love you too.
Thank you.
I want to thank my son for joining. That is my son that is tuning in. So if anybody would like to check out, and that's my adorable little grandson, little Kai, puppy. So thank you, son, for joining in. And thank you for all the listeners out there. I just want to do a closing summary of what today tea time is. And we will be back at 7 p.m. for the final tea time. What a tender and meaningful tea time. Debbie, thank you for reminding us that grief does not need to be rushed, and healing does not need to be loud. Your words showed us that even the most delicate creations can carry deep strength. Today's conversation honors the beauty of remembrance and the courage it takes to transform pain into something that still holds love. You reminded us that it is okay to carry memories softly, to grieve in layers, and to let healing unfold in its own time. To everyone listening, may you leave this space knowing that your feelings are valid, your healing is personal, and your story deserves great gentleness. Until we gather again, keep holding your heart with care and honoring what has shaped you. And thank you all for tuning in. It was truly a pleasure having you here, Debbie. And I'll see everybody at 7 p.m. with the second tea time and the final tea time of season 6. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.